Hi, welcome back to Recap Pro. Today we are going to recap a thriller/mystery movie, Black Death. Without wasting time, let's begin. 1348, the year of our Lord. The movie opens up with this timestamp. We hear a man's voice telling us about the devastating environment of the kingdom. Many had died and the number was uncountable. The dead bodies were also lying in the open, and that is why the smell and its odor spread in the air. The plague had mercilessly taken the lives of many. The narrator considers the magnitude of the loss of life much more than the loss due to wars. This plague wiped off half the population of the kingdom. The source of the plague and how it spread was a mystery that no one knew. According to the priests, it was God's punishment. But, if it was, as they say, the narrator says no one knew what commandment was broken and what sin was committed for them to earn the wrath of God in such a way. The narrator then says it was not God's doings. Instead, he implies it was some sort of devilry and witchcraft. He then reveals that he has a team of some people who know the truth, indicating that the priests may either be lying or are kept in the dark. The narrator and his group are working towards a common objective, to find the demon. We then see a man waking up by the chime of the bell in the church. It is Osmond, played by Eddie Redmayne. 4 cloaked figures carrying someone, or something on a stretcher are shown. It is a body of an old man. They enter a cave lit by fire. The body is completely naked and is placed on a table. It seems to be a body of an infected person. His arm is lifted using a stick. By the looks of it, nobody dares to touch it with bare hands. The cloaked figures have their mouth covered as well, ensuring total protection. When the arm of the dead is raised, we see blood under his arms. Osmond then checks his body and ensures he isn't bleeding from his underarms. He then bangs the door and calls out for Brother Thomas. He keeps knocking and banging on the door, but the door does not open. Meanwhile, the cloaked people transfer the body to another cart. Thomas opens the door and Osmond asks who was taken from them. It was Brother Ignatius. He asks if it was the pestilence. But Thomas says they haven't been told about it yet. We then get to know that Osmond is kept under supervision, locked, and away from people. Osmond asks Thomas to let him out and says he has no signs of the infection. In the next scene, we see an old man lighting up a candle, and soon after, we see a body lying on the floor and see people gathering in the church for a ceremony. Osmond also joins them. The following day, Osmond is in the storage room where food is kept. He steals some bread and heads out. He reaches a place where we see dead bodies covered in white lying on the ground. A woman is seen mourning over a man's body. While walking around the bodies, he sees a woman sitting by the wall. Osmond goes to the house of Avril. She sees him and hugs him. They both are happy to see each other, and one is happier that the other is alive. Avril asks his whereabouts and Osmond tells her he had been confined under the impression that he was sick. He tries to calm Avril down and brings out the food he got from the granary. Osmond tells her that the situation is getting worse and even the monastery is not safe. He asks her to get away from these lands and hide in the Dentwich forest until the plague has passed. Avril then says the prior had told them this was God's new purge and it is sent to wash away their sins. She then asks Osmond if God is punishing the people of the kingdom. He immediately says no and insists that she must go back to the forest where the plague hasn't impacted her yet. Avril begins packing her stuff and asks him to come along with her. But Osmond says he cannot leave the monastery and betray God. But according to Avril, he has already betrayed him. She picks up her stuff and loads it on her white horse. Osmond comes down to her and cloaks her to keep her warm. She says she will wait for him for a week at dawn by the Martyrs' Cross in the forest. Osmond has 1 week to see and be with her. Avril mounts her and rides away. Osmond heads back to the monastery and kneels before the cross. He demands that he serves God outside the walls and promises to stick by the commands and not sway away. Ulrich, the envoy of the bishop, arrives at the monastery. He comes to deliver a secretive message. He comes there to find a man who can guide them to a village that is untouched by the pestilence. Osmond, looking for an opportunity to leave the walls of the monastery, volunteers to guide Ulrich through the great marsh. Ulrich agrees, but Father tells Osmond that Ulrich is more dangerous than the pestilence itself. Father warns him again, but Osmond is sure this is what he wanted, to get away from the monastery while still being God's devotee. Father and Osmond's brothers see him off. Osmond is taken to Ulrich's men and told that Ulrich didn't exactly speak the truth. He learns that the village they are headed to discards God and religions, and replaces it with Satan and devil worship. It is a village where sacrifices, cannibalism, and raising the dead prevail. The soldiers also tell him that their job is to bring the necromancer back to the bishop, who intends to kill him himself. Osmond hesitates and feels betrayed, but continues to ride with them to do God's work. On the way, Swire tells Osmond about his crew. Wulfstan and Griff were in the king's army with Swire for many years. Ivo had his tongue cut off because he gave nothing away when he was captured by the Frenchmen. Mold is extremely aggressive and mustn't be bothered. Dailywag is a cold-hearted person who loves to torture and is a hangman, and there are rumors about Dailywag being a murderer, a thief, and a defiler of women. They pass by a mob that has a woman on the cross accused of poisoning the well that left half the village dead. The woman says she offered her blessings and did nothing wrong. The people say otherwise. A man claims she was seen casting a spell on the well. The people demand that she be burnt alive to save the village and what remains in it. Ulrich steps in and cuts the rope she was tied with, but as she tried to go away, Ulrich slits her throat and kills her. Ulrich asks Osmond not to interfere in it again. Later that night, around the fire, Dailywag speaks about the increasing number of witches and how they have been eliminated around the villages. He tells Osmond that a village in the north had once killed 128 in one night. By the end of it, no woman was left alive, and by the end of the week, men turned to pigs for their needs. The soldiers warn Osmond and tell him he can walk away. They also ask him about the church's ideology and belief regarding pestilence. Wulfstan narrates the Battle of Crécy in Normandy against the ridiculously outnumbering French. He tells Osmond how they defeated them using the fierce buzzing arrows and left them dead and dying by the end of the battle. He also tells him that King Edwards didn't use the Misricotta knife stabbed under the armpit through the heart that gave them an easy death. Instead, the Frenchmen were left alive to be killed with no mercy, chopping the body parts one by one. There, chivalry died and invited death that hasn't left. The next day, soldiers see another group of people walking through the shallow waters hitting themselves with their faces covered. Swire approaches them and the man tells him not to go ahead as where they intend to go is full of savages. Dailywag's senses lie from Osmond as he is curious as to why a monk will leave a safe monastery during these difficult times. In the next scene, we see Griff coughs and spits blood. Wulfstan moves towards him to check up on him and sees a lump on his neck. Ulrich says Griff cannot continue and his journey ends here. Wulfstan then kills Griff and rids him from the pain. Soldiers move ahead and reach the forest of Dentwich, less than half a day from the marsh. There, they camp in for the night. At sunrise, Osmond wakes up and runs towards Marty's Cross to look for Avril. Someone behind the trees watches him calling out for Avril. Osmond sees her horse and dress dripping blood. She is dead. He then sees men surrounding him from the top. He rushes back and alerts Ulrich and the other soldiers. They are attacked by the savages. Ulrich and the band decimate the savages. Osmond was in the cave, away from the fight but even attacked by the savages and pulled by his legs. He got stabbed but in the nick of time, he is saved by Ivo. The savages have driven away, but Ivo is killed in the process. The soldiers move forward and see the village beyond the marsh. They walk through the swamp and reach the borders. They enter the village. While they walk around, people watch them with curiosity and to their surprise, everyone is so silent and there is peace in the air. The soldiers stand in the center of the village and are surrounded by the villagers. A man comes forward and asks the reason for their visit. Ulrich says they seek refuge and are looking for a place to rest. The man says they are all welcome and introduces himself as Hob. Ulrich learns that the village is completely free from pestilence and they have only heard rumors of such a plague. A lady then comes and offers to help Osmond take care of his wound. In a few seconds, using an ointment, the lady heals the wounds and the pain goes away. Ulrich is suspicious because this village has no graveyards and no burning corpses. This is strange for Ulrich in times like these. Ulrich sees a girl wearing a symbol that only the bishop's envoy has. He is under the impression that the 4 men who had been charged with a similar task were killed in that village. In the next scene, we see the soldiers at the dinner table and are welcomed to the land and the table. Ulrich stands up to thank them and starts praying at the table. The people ridicule him for a long prayer. The woman who healed Osmond calls him secretly. He goes out to meet her and she takes him to the body of a girl who spoke of him before she breathed her last. He uncovers her face and sees Avril. Osmond then complains to God for taking Avril away from him. He then sees Avril covered in blood approaching him and asking him why he betrayed her. Only to discover that it was his mind playing games and it was Ulrich who came to him. Ulrich says the village is untouched by the pestilence, but it is also without God. Langeva, the healer, and Osmond take a walk together and they talk about Avril's burial. She guarantees that he will see Avril again. She reads his mind and knows that he meant to alert her of the dangers from Ulrich. She takes him into the woods. He sees cloaked women in white performing some ceremony. The lady, Langeva, turns out to be the necromancer they were looking for. Osmond sees her bring Avril back to life. Frightened and shocked, Osmond runs back. In the meantime, the soldiers are all intoxicated and not in their senses. The soldiers are all tied up and locked in a cellar under the ground. The villagers then gather around them. Langeva addresses her people and for them, the soldiers are the villains who lied about being refugees. She says the pestilence is a punishment from the God of Christians to the Christians alone. According to her, killing Christians keeps them safe from the plague. She offers them a chance to live. She will let them go only if they renounce their religion and God. Bob picks Dailywag and kills him on the crucifix. Swire then says he will renounce. Other soldiers try to stop him but he is pulled out of the cage, taken away, and made to renounce the religion of Christ. He is escorted away and hanged. Langeva pulls Osmond out and demands that he renounce his religion and offers him to stay with Avril, who is just resurrected by the necromancer. He goes into the hut where Avril was kept. She acts weird and does unusual things. She doesn't seem to feel alright and collapses in Osmond's lap. He picks up a weapon and stabs her and kills her. He brings her body back to Langeva. He attacks the woman with the same woman. Her cheeks tear up. They bring horses and tie Ulrich's hands to 2 horses that stretch his body apart. While this is happening, the remaining soldiers get their hands on a knife and try to cut themselves loose. Ulrich speaks to Osmond for one last time and asks him to take his shirt off. To everyone's surprise, they see that Ulrich is infected and carries the pestilence. "I am death," says Ulrich, and the horses tear his limbs apart, killing Ulrich. Towards the end, Langeva tries to escape, but before she goes away, she tells Osmond that she isn't a witch of any sort and Avril had only been given drugs to go wobbly. She also tells him that she was alive until he stabbed her. She also tells her that it is her knowledge of plants and herbs that enables her to make magic-like medicines that work instantly. Langeva was only a good leader that made people follow her lead. Wulfstan is the lone survivor and he takes Bob back to the king as a necromancer for trial. Osmond is dropped back into the monastery and he lives a miserable life full of grief. We see him handing over a woman to the dungeon where she is tortured for practicing witchcraft. Osmond is now an inquisitor who works for the church. He sees Langeva in every woman punished for sorcery, like he is almost haunted by the plant lover. Wulfstan, as the narrator tells us, Osmond loves his job. The movie ends showing Osmond at the execution of a woman suspected of witchcraft. She is burned alive. Hope you liked the video. And if you want to watch extra such amazing recaps, then do subscribe to our channel. Goodbye and take care.